Okay, we are going to create a logo draft of the font that we chose for our business card. We're going to create a business card, and we're even going to create a letterhead. So that entails a piece of paper, essentially. So we're going to create a new file over here in Illustrator now that we've launched that. Our destination for our what we are creating here is going to be print. So there's lots of great presets here. So under print, I'm going to select the letter size page on which to create my logo. So now that I've selected it, you can see the size over here. I'm going to change points to a unit of measurement I'm more comfortable with. For me, that is in inches because I'm going with industry standard 8.5 by 11 size page. This is going to be called my logo, and I will call it draft in all caps here, because that is essentially what we're creating here. And if we take a look further down, we don't need bleed because we're not printing to the edges of the paper or the appearance that it's being printed to the edge. And our color mode is CMYK, so cyan, magenta, yellow, black, which is for color process printing for print. And our dots per inch is 300. So we'll be talking more about that as the semester carries on. So let's create a new page on which to create our logo. So now that we have a full-size page here, you can see the setup across the top of the screen. We have this lovely toolbox to the left. There are two ways to use this toolbox. So you can turn it into a single column. I like to use a double column because it's far too long and it goes off the end of my screen. So the toolbox itself is adaptable. And so I'm creating a 2-column toolbox so that I can see everything. The first thing I'm going to need is my text tool. So a text tool is universal in every program. And there are sometimes some presets where you can simply, in Word, you can just, it's already set up. You create a new document and there's already a text box. In Illustrator, however, it's thinking that we are going to illustrate, correct? Not necessarily type. And Illustrator isn't meant for a lot of type. Illustrator is meant for creating illustrations and logos, and then we import those into other programs. So we would place them in InDesign. We would place them in Photoshop if we were going to do further work. And if we wanted to create a poster with lots of text, our best bet is to create the illustration in Illustrator and then place it in InDesign in order to add the rest of our text. But you can do full-blown posters in Illustrator. It's just not meant to create lots of text. But let's start with some. So there are two ways to add text to a page. So I can simply click and start typing, and it gives you some Greek text here. The problem with that is it comes in Myriad Pro, which is the default font for Illustrator at 12 points. So it's a little bit small. If I Control Z that or Command Z that on a Mac, what I can do is when I select my text tool is I can go to my character palette on the right hand side. Now if you don't have that set up already here, it doesn't show up as a palette for you to manipulate here. All your palettes, all your options are underneath the window menu. So what I could do is go all the way down to type. It would be under type, and we can find the character palette, lots of character styles, our paragraph, all the stuff that we need here in order to work with text. So we have type, character, and I dragged mine into my board here so that I can access it all the time. So the first thing you need to do is find your font. What font did you choose in order to create your name with? So I'm going to choose this one. Bromello is the one that I downloaded from dafont.com. I've installed it, and now I'm going to choose it right here. I'm also going to change the font size to the largest default size here. So in Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, the programs that we will be learning, right here in the character palette, or I could even change it up at the top Here we go, there's character up here as well. It's the exact same box, but it often covers your page. So that's why I like to use the one that you can move around here. Okay, so I'm going to use this one instead. So I'm going to use the default here. So I can choose, it's the default's 12, but I can use the arrows to go up and down like so. I could use one of the defaults by clicking on the arrow to the right, or if I have a font size in mind, I can literally highlight that and type it in. And what the leading does, the space between the lines, it's an automatically set up system. So that's built into the algorithm of the font. And so it automatically goes to its default setting for that size type. Now I can start typing. So there are two ways to type, to select and type in Illustrator. So I can just simply click anywhere on this page and type in my name. I'm going to show you how to make that smaller in a minute. Or if I move down here and click and drag a box in which I want my text to fit, I can type it there. Now, as you can see, if I go back up to my toolbox and select the Move tool or the selection tool here, you can see that this one was not limited to a size of a box. I just simply clicked and started typing. But this one is limited to the box I clicked and dragged with the text tool. So you can see at the bottom right of my text box, I have a plus sign. The plus sign means, hey, there's still more text available. So I would have to grab one of these anchor points and extend it in order to reveal the rest of the text. If there is no more text that's, basically invisible because there wasn't enough room for it, there would still be a red plus sign here in the bottom right corner. As you can see, it's disappeared and now I have a clear box. So that's indicating that I don't have any more text to show. If I move that back up and hide it, you can see the red plus sign reappears. There we go. And that's going to be important for you to remember when we're working in InDesign and Photoshop as well. So let's see how these two react. If I wanted to select this box, this text, I would use the select tool. I could click anywhere on my text, click, drag, and move that around. And you'll see that my text tool or my tool changes. So right now, it's just a black arrow floating out here. If I click, I deselect the item. If I move my mouse towards the item, in order for me to select that, see how that black box pops up on the bottom of my arrow tool there, the selection tool. If I click now, it selects it. So if I'm inside this area, I can select it because I can see that, and a symbol shows up on my box or on my tool in order to indicate that I am, yes, indeed, about to click on that item and move it around. If I grab an anchor point at this point, I can do some pretty major distortions here. Control or Command Z. I do not want to do that. I don't want to click and drag and distort, but I do want to make this smaller. So in that regard, I'm going to grab a corner anchor point, not a side, but a corner. And you're going to learn that the Shift key is your best friend when it comes to using Adobe products. And actually this works in all, it's a universal actually in all of your programs, Word and other programs as well. If you hold the Shift key while you click and drag a point, everything stays in proportion. See that? No matter how I move my mouse, I'm no longer able to distort. It stays in proportion. So that's your Shift key. Always letting go of your mouse first before you let go of the Shift key. And now I can move that into place. Great. So there's the start of my word mark, my name, my logo draft. So I could do the same with this one. Corner anchor point, Shift, drag, or wait a minute. No, I can't. So the difference here is that I now have a box, a text box in which I've placed my text. Also, If I wanted to rotate this or change the angle of it, when I click on the one that I've just simply clicked and started typing, I did not click and drag a box for my type to fit into. Watch what happens when I hover on the corner just outside of this anchor point. So we saw some changes here. No symbols on the mouse, symbol on the mouse, so I can click and select the item. Watch what happens when I go to the corner. So we have, that is a tool that allows me to extend the anchor point, the selected anchor point. Again, holding shift keeps everything in proportion. If I hover just outside of it, I get a double-ended arrow anchor point, which allows me to rotate it, which can be a lot of fun if you need to rotate and create a little bit of focus, some contrast with the other text, just like demonstrated in the menu options for contrast in text. And notice it also rotates from the center of my selection. And if I hold shift, it will only let me rotate in perfect 45-degree angles. So if I need a 90-degree angle, perfect. You can see even it says 90 degrees as I rotate that. Now let's do the same thing with the text inside a text box. What if I hover around that one, hold shift, and start to turn? Oh, look what happens. The text must stay on the baseline provided for that text box. So the baseline never rotates. The box does, but the baseline never does. It stays on its horizontal plane. So this is why in Illustrator, if you're going to do anything fancy schmancy, do not type inside a box. Do not click and drag a text box in which to fit your type. Just simply click and start typing. So there we go. That is the beginning of my logo draft in Illustrator. One more thing I'm going to do though, other than just sizing it, if you wanted to play with color, where you would find that is if you don't have it set up in the right hand side in your options palettes, and we call those, there's a great palette called Swatches in Illustrator. If you do not see that, you'll go under the window menu, you'll go down to color, you'll see this guide here. If you go under the window menu, you would have to go down to what's called Swatches. Color is for you mixing yourself, and you can choose any of these in here. Just like so, by clicking inside this range, and then you can play around with your colors. Notice it's in C, M, Y, and K. But if you want preset options, and by all means, please use those, scroll all the way down to Swatches. So Swatches gives us these presets. I'm just going to change my logo draft to this lovely red that I like. And there we go. Now I have my logo draft with my name. And the next lesson, video lesson, will be on how to turn this into a business card. So I'm going to save that. Control or Command S. I have not saved it anywhere to my desktop. I have only named it. So I'm going to go to my course folder and oh, excuse me, and I'm going to save it as a logo draft. I'm going to save it as a .ai file. That is a working file, so I can go back in and edit it later. Save. So there we go. Illustrator options. Save. Adobe Creative Cloud. Yes, thank you. And there we go. We've saved this draft.